Have you ever found yourself wide awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling while the rest of the world is silent? Maybe your heart is racing just a little too fast, or perhaps you feel a strange sense of dread that you can't quite explain. Most of us over 50 just shrug it off. We blame it on a late dinner, an aging bladder, or just the inevitable toll of getting older. But what if I told you that 3 a.m. isn't just a time on the clock? What if I told you it's a critical window where your heart might be fighting for its life? Welcome to the Health Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and today we are joined by Dr. Julian, a leading cardiologist specializing in preventative medicine for the aging population. Dr. Julian, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. It's a pleasure, though I wish we were meeting under less urgent circumstances. The 3 a.m. danger is something I see in my clinic every single day, yet it's rarely discussed in mainstream health media until it's too late.
That sounds ominous, doctor. We often hear that sleep is for recovery, but you're suggesting that for many seniors, sleep is actually a time of high risk. Why is 3 a.m. so significant?
It's about the intersection of our biology and our survival instincts. You see, our bodies operate on a 24-hour internal clock called the circadian rhythm. Around 3 a.m., several things happen simultaneously. Your core body temperature hits its lowest point, and your levels of melatonin, the sleep hormone, begin to dip while cortisol, our stress hormone, starts its very slow climb to wake us up. For a healthy person, this transition is seamless. But for someone with underlying cardiovascular strain, this shift triggers a fight or flight response. Instead of a peaceful transition, your nervous system slams on the gas pedal. Your heart rate spikes, your blood pressure surges, and suddenly you're wide awake with a pounding chest.
So being awake at that hour isn't the problem. It's a symptom of a deeper crisis?
Exactly. It's an alarm bell. When you wake up abruptly at that hour, it often means your brain has detected a drop in oxygen or a spike in blood pressure that it simply couldn't ignore. It's waking you up to save you, but the underlying damage being done to your arteries and heart muscle during those spikes is cumulative. We aren't just talking about being tired the next day, we are talking about the structural remodeling of your heart.
That is a terrifying thought. Most people just think, oh, I'll just have an extra coffee tomorrow. They don't realize their heart is literally under attack while they're trying to rest. But why does this seem to hit the 50-plus demographic so much harder?
As we age, our blood vessels lose their elasticity, a process called arterial stiffness. Younger hearts can absorb those midnight surges in blood pressure, but at 60 or 70, those vessels are more like brittle pipes. When the pressure spikes at 3 a.m., it puts immense strain on the left atrium of the heart. This is why we see a staggering number of strokes and heart attacks occurring in the very early morning hours. It's not a coincidence, it's a biological flashpoint.
And this leads us to something even more specific that many people overlook: the way they breathe, or don't breathe, during those hours. Dr. Julian, before we move on, is it true that your heart can actually change shape because of these nighttime wake-ups?
Yes, Sarah, and that's exactly what we need to dive into next. The heart literally stretches under the pressure, leading to a condition that millions of Americans have but don't know it.
Before the break, Dr. Julian, you mentioned something that stopped me in my tracks, that the heart can actually change shape due to these midnight wake-ups. This brings us to a topic that many people associate with loud snoring, but it's actually a silent killer: sleep apnea. How does this tie into the 3 a.m. danger zone?
Sarah, sleep apnea is perhaps the most underdiagnosed cardiovascular threat in the Western world today. Most people think it's just an annoying snoring habit. It's not. When you have obstructive sleep apnea, the soft tissues in your throat collapse, physically blocking your airway. Your body is literally suffocating. When your brain realizes it isn't getting oxygen, it panics. It sends a massive jolt of adrenaline to the heart to wake you up so you can take a breath. This often happens right around that 3 a.m. window, when our sleep is at its deepest and most vulnerable.
So every time someone gasps or wakes up startled, their heart is basically getting an electric shock of adrenaline?
Precisely. Now imagine that happening 30, 40, or even 60 times every single hour. The oxygen levels in your blood plummet, sometimes to levels lower than what we see in patients in the ICU. To compensate, the heart has to pump harder and faster against a closed airway. This creates a vacuum effect in the chest, which physically stretches the walls of the heart, specifically the upper chambers, the atria. Over time, this stretching creates scar tissue, and that scar tissue is the perfect breeding ground for atrial fibrillation, or A-fib.
A-fib is a term we hear a lot, But for our listeners who might not know, why is that so dangerous for someone in their 60s or 70s?
A-fib is an irregular, quivering heartbeat. When the heart quivers, instead of pumping firmly, blood can pool in the corners of the atria and form clots. If one of those clots breaks loose and travels to the brain, that is a stroke. In fact, people with untreated sleep apnea are 4 times more likely to develop A-fib and significantly more likely to suffer a stroke. And the tragedy is, many people wake up at 3 a.m. feeling restless, and they have no idea they just survived a dozen miniature suffocations.
It's an invisible cycle of violence against the heart. And I think many of our listeners are wondering, I don't snore that loudly, so I must be fine. Is that a dangerous assumption to make?
A very dangerous one. There is a version called silent apnea or central sleep apnea, where the brain simply forgets to tell the body to breathe. You don't have to be a heavy snorer to be at risk. If you wake up with a dry mouth, a morning headache, or that specific 3 a.m. heart pounding sensation, you need to be tested. We are seeing more and more thin, fit individuals with this condition because of how the jaw and airway change as we age.
So it's not just about weight or lifestyle, it's about the structural integrity of our airways as we get older. But Dr. Julian, there's another reason people say they wake up at 3 a.m. They say, I just had to go to the bathroom. They call it a small bladder. But you told me earlier that this might actually be a heart problem in disguise. Can you explain that?
This is one of the most misunderstood symptoms in geriatric medicine. People think their bladder is waking them up, but in reality, it's often their heart sending a frantic SOS signal to the kidneys. And the reason why will change how you look at your midnight bathroom trips forever.
We're talking about the 3 a.m. danger with Dr. Julian. Doctor, right before we stepped away, you said something fascinating, that waking up to go to the bathroom, what doctors call nocturia, might not be a bladder issue at all, but a sign of heart failure or cardiac stress. That seems counterintuitive to most of us. How does the heart tell the bladder what to do?
It sounds like science fiction, but it's pure physiology. When your heart is struggling to pump efficiently during the night, perhaps due to the sleep apnea or high blood pressure we discussed, the pressure inside the heart chambers begins to rise. When the heart feels this excess pressure, it thinks there is too much fluid in the entire circulatory system. In a desperate attempt to lower that pressure and protect itself, the heart releases a hormone called atrial natriuretic peptide, or ANP.
ANP? What does that hormone actually do?
ANP travels straight to your kidneys and give them a very specific command: get rid of water immediately. The kidneys then work overtime to produce urine, which fills your bladder and wakes you up. So you stand up, walk to the bathroom, and think, oh, I just had a full bladder. But the reality is, your bladder was only full because your heart was under so much pressure that it had to dump fluid to survive the night. It's a false signal created by a heart in distress.
That is a game changer. So if someone is getting up 3 or 4 times a night, they might be treating it with prostate medication or bladder control pills when they should really be looking at their cardiovascular health.
Exactly. If you find that your legs are slightly swollen during the day and then you're urinating frequently at night, that's a classic sign. When you lie flat, the fluid that pooled in your legs during the day returns to the bloodstream. An aging heart can't always handle that sudden increase in volume. The ANP hormone is released and your night is ruined by trips to the bathroom. It's a vicious cycle that prevents deep, restorative sleep, which in turn makes your blood pressure even worse the next day.
It's like the body is trapped in a feedback loop of stress. We've talked about the scary stuff, the strokes, the A-fib, the heart remodeling, but I want to move towards hope. Many of our listeners in the US and Europe are proactive. They want to know what they can do tonight to break this cycle. If someone wakes up at 3 a.m. tonight, what is the first thing they should realize about their environment?
The first thing is to realize that your bedroom might be a metabolic trap. Most people keep their rooms too warm. In the US, we love our central heating. But for a person over 50, a warm room is a recipe for cardiac stress. When the room is too hot, your heart has to work harder to dissipate heat, which keeps your heart rate elevated and makes you more likely to hit that threshold that wakes you up at 3 a.m.
So the cold room theory isn't just for comfort, it's for cardiac safety. What's the magic number for our thermostats?
The research suggests around 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. It sounds chilly, but it allows your core temperature to drop, which signals the heart to slow down and enter a truly restorative state. But temperature is just the beginning. We also need to talk about the chemical safety of our sleep. Sarah, have you ever noticed how many people reach for a glass of wine to help them sleep through the night?
Oh, all the time. It's the classic nightcap. Does that make the 3 a.m. danger worse?
It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. Alcohol is a powerful muscle relaxant. It makes that airway collapse we talked about much more likely. And as the alcohol wears off around, you guessed it, 3 a.m., it causes a rebound spike in adrenaline. It's the perfect storm for a midnight cardiac event.
We are entering the home stretch of today's episode. And Dr. Julian, you've given us a lot to think about, from the bangkwang jia or pseudo-bladder effect to the dangers of the midnight glass of wine. Now, let's get into the toolkit. For our listeners who want to protect their hearts and finally get past that 3 a.m. wake-up call, what are the non-negotiables? Let's start with supplements, because that's a huge market in the US and Europe.
When it comes to the aging heart and sleep, magnesium is the undisputed king. But not just any magnesium. Most people buy magnesium oxide because it's cheap, but is poorly absorbed and usually just causes digestive upset. For cardiovascular and neurological calm, I recommend magnesium bisglycinate. The glycinate part is an amino acid that actually helps the brain relax, while the magnesium helps the smooth muscles of your blood vessels to dilate, lowering your blood pressure naturally before you hit that 3 a.m. window.
And what about the timing? Should they take it right before bed?
About 60 minutes before you intend to sleep. This gives the mineral time to enter the bloodstream. Another critical tool is something called mouth taping, which sounds extreme but has become a major trend in functional medicine. By using a small piece of medical-grade tape to ensure you breathe through your nose, you force your body to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a natural vasodilator. It opens up your arteries and lowers the workload on your heart significantly.
Mouth taping. I can see some of our listeners being a bit skeptical about that. But if it keeps the oxygen level stable, I can see why a cardiologist would love it. What about the physical setup of the bed? Does how we lie down matter for our heart?
It matters immensely. For anyone with even a hint of heart failure or sleep apnea, sleeping flat on your back is the worst possible position. Gravity pulls everything down, compressing the airway and making the heart work harder to move blood against gravity. I often recommend a wedge pillow or an adjustable base to keep the head elevated by just 10 to 15 degrees. This subtle shift reduces the pressure in the heart's chambers, meaning less ANP hormone is released and fewer trips to the bathroom.
It's amazing how these small mechanical changes can have such a profound effect on our internal chemistry. But what about the blue light issue? We hear it all the time, but does it really affect the heart, or is it just about the eyes?
It affects the heart through the master clock in the brain. If you are looking at an iPad or a smartphone at 9 p.m., you are telling your brain it is noon. This suppresses melatonin and keeps your cortisol levels high. When that cortisol finally drops, it does so irregularly, often leading to that dreaded 3 a.m. spike. My rule is the 90-minute blackout. No screens, no bright overhead LED lights, 90 minutes before bed. Switch to warm amber lamps. It tells your heart the sun has set, it is time to slow down.
90 minutes. That's a challenge in our modern world, but considering the alternative is a potential stroke, it's a small price to pay. Dr. Julian, before we wrap up, is there one emergency tip for someone who does wake up tonight at 3 a.m. and feels their heart racing? What should they do in that moment to calm the storm?
That is a vital question. If you wake up and feel that panic, do not get out of bed immediately. That sudden change in posture can spike your blood pressure even further. Instead, stay still and use the 4-7-8 breathing technique. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale slowly for 8. This specifically stimulates the vagus nerve, which acts as a brake for the heart. It tells your nervous system that you are safe, forcing the heart rate to drop.
We've covered so much ground today, from the biological alarm clock of 3 a.m. to the surprising ways our heart communicates through our bladder. Dr. Julian, as we close this episode, what is the one message you want to leave with our listeners who are in their prime years and want to stay there?
The message is simple. Do not ignore the whispers of your body before they become screams. A 3 a.m. wake-up call isn't an annoyance, it's a conversation. Your heart is asking for better conditions, better temperature, better oxygen, less stress, and better nutrients. In the US and Europe, we have the best medical technology in the world, but no technology can replace the daily habits that respect our biological rhythms. You have the power to recode your nights. It starts with one small change tonight. Maybe it's turning down the thermostat, or maybe it's finally scheduling that sleep study you've been avoiding.
That's so powerful. It's about moving from a state of fear to a state of agency. We don't have to be victims of our aging process. We can be the architects of our longevity. Dr. Julian, thank you for sharing your expertise and potentially saving some lives today.
Thank you, Sarah. Remember, everyone, a good day starts the night before. Take care of your heart, and it will take care of your future.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Health Longevity Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend or a loved one. You never know who might be staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. tonight, looking for these very answers. We've included links to the studies Dr. Julian mentioned, as well as recommendations for magnesium bisglycinate and sleep tracking tools in our show notes. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the science of staying sharp, strong, and vibrant. Until next time, sleep well and stay healthy.
Good night and stay proactive.
And one last thing, if you are experiencing chest pain or severe shortness of breath, please don't wait for a podcast to tell you what to do. Seek medical attention immediately. Your life is worth more than a wait-and-see approach. We'll see you in the next episode, where we discuss the muscle loss crisis and how to keep your strength into your 90s. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.